Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. As the title suggests, in today's video we are going to be talking about and comparing two of the most famous Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes, at least in my opinion the most famous ones, and the only two I personally own so far from her. First, I want to give you a bit of a background story and tell you what actually inspired me filming this video at all. What was the thought process behind actually coming up with the idea that this could be a video to share. So as you guys probably know, the Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes are famous for being very good quality, very easy to blend, beautifully bigger gorgeous shades, and overall just very pleasing experience to use. However, they are $125 or £111 if you purchase them here in the UK where I live. So they are not cheap. And because of that, if you live on a budget like I do, you're probably not going to go and pick up all of her eyeshadow palettes. You want to do your research and see which one will suit your needs and your style the most out of her palettes, which she has quite a few now. So when I was having a look first, it appeared to me that the gold and sunset palettes are quite similar. Basically, a lot of very natural nude brown shades with a couple of pop of colors, and because of that I thought I'm gonna only pick up one. And whilst I do find the gold palette gorgeous, I just found the shades in that palette a bit boring. I thought that they are quite repetitive, and whilst I do love blue, I don't wear it on a daily basis. So I gravitated towards the sunset palette much more, and as you can probably tell from the videos I uploaded so far, I purchased that. This is how the sunset palette looks like. Absolutely gorgeous. You have a lot of brown shades in here with a lot of gold shimmery shades, and you have a couple of pop of colors, really just a couple, because it's pretty much this, I would say hot pink, but one might argue that it's red. For me it's more like a pink shade, but anyway, so you have this hot pink shade and you have this yellow shade. Now you do get this very light pink color, but even on me this is pretty much my skin tone, so I would just use this shade to help blend other shades out. On its own it's not gonna be visible, so you don't really get much use out of it, and it's definitely not a pop of color, so you pretty much just have these two. So like I said, at first they both appear to be a neutral eyeshadow palette with two pop of colors in each, and based on that I decided to go with sunset because I just found the warm shades more versatile and I felt like I'm gonna get more use out of it, especially because I love my modern Renaissance palette and I love these gorgeous red and pink and rose gold shades in my makeup. I feel like they are really flattering. But then when I actually got this palette and I sat down to film my one palette 3 looks video using this palette, I immediately realized that I have a bit of a problem using this palette. And the problem is that you pretty much get these 3 warm medium brown shades and you don't really get anything lighter than that. Of course, except this very light pink shade that I already talked about, but I didn't really have a nice light shade to start out my makeup with, and that really bothered me. I just felt like if you are going to use the rose gold shades or the hot pink shade from this palette, you don't necessarily want to have this orangey brown shade in your crease. And whilst these shades are really easily blendable, including the dark brown shade, you might not want to have that orangey color in your crease, and it might be too dark for you and too harsh for the makeup look you're trying to create. So I just had that problem that I don't really have a crease shade in this palette, although I have 3 super similar orangey medium brown shades, which basically made me feel like this palette is just not complete. And so I had this gold palette on my wish list for the longest time ever. I have a wish list of what makeup I want to try out in the future, and this was one of the most expensive items on there. Not the most expensive one, because I do have 2 Pat McGrath palettes there as well, but definitely one that I couldn't just pick up on a whim. So I waited about a year to have this palette. And time to time I checked on eBay and Depop to see if anyone is selling one. And basically a couple of weeks ago I found a girl selling it for a very reasonable price, and based on the pictures and her reviews, it was clear to me that it was a genuine palette and it hasn't been used. So I was really happy because I managed to pick up the palette for almost half of the price, so that was amazing. And so here we are. I finally have this palette, and I don't know if you can tell based on the footage of the other palette or not. I will put them next to each other in a second, but it's completely different than what I expected it to be. As you can see, you get 3 really similar light brown shades in this one, and they are a lot more cool toned than the brown shades in the Sunset palette. So with the help of this palette, I'm finally able to create the looks I wanted to using the Sunset palette. On the other hand, this palette is overall as well a lot more cool toned than the Sunset palette is. And whilst it's called Gold palette, and when you think of gold, you would normally think of yellow gold, at least that's what I think of. So I expected this palette to be a lot more warm than it is. It is a super cool toned palette, and I love the 2 pop of colors in this one. These 2 blue shades, absolutely gorgeous. You also get a much better variety of gold colors than you get in the other palette. In the Sunset palette, you have 2 rose gold shades that are super similar to each other, whilst in this one, I feel like you have a lot more variety of gold shades. You have these 2 gold colors, which are very green toned gold shades. Then you have this and this gold shade, which are very similar. They're basically a lighter and a darker version of a super cool toned gold color. And then here on the bottom you get 2 typical gold shades, but I would still say that they are quite bronzy. And then you get a quite yellow gold shade in the middle of the palette. So there are a lot of gold shades in this one, but completely different gold shades than in the Sunset palette. So here they are next to each other. As you can see, they are super different. The only one shade that's in both palettes is this dark brown shade. Natasha actually said it herself that she pretty much just renamed that dark brown shade and included it in both palettes. Apart of that though, you get a really different color story. However, I feel like these palettes work the best together because you get all of the light brown shades in this palette, you get all the medium brown shades in that palette. You also get one more brown shade in the Sunset palette, but not as cool toned as the one you get in both palettes. And again, you get a lot of different gold shades in the Sunset palette as well. However, in this one you have rose gold shades as well that you don't get in the gold palette, and I feel like those will work the best with these cool tone brown shades. So I feel like if you want to have a really versatile collection of Natasha Denona eyeshadows, then your best bet is to have both of these. Now, I don't have the Lila palette, which is basically the third 15 pens eyeshadow palette she has in her collection with this same type of packaging. However, I know that that palette has all the purple and grey shades, so if you really want to go cool toned, you will have to have that palette. I feel like the gold palette is in the middle. It is more like a neutral brown collection. They are still quite cool toned, but not grey. I don't personally really like purple in my makeup or in my clothing, so I would have no use for that palette, especially for the price. Like I said, I only want to have the eyeshadow palettes from her that I know I will get a lot of use out of. I'm gonna include a very quick video for you because I created today's eye makeup look using the two eyeshadow palettes, one on each eye, and I do feel like that this makeup look turned out really similar. However, this is pretty much the only eye makeup look that you can create with both eyeshadow palettes. So first I did the gold side. I went in with the shade Aria, which is a gorgeous crease color, and I applied it to my crease, as I said. Once I was done with that, I took the shade Log, which is this dark brown shade. I added it to my outer corner. Once I applied enough of it, I went on to prepare the cut crease. When the cut crease was done, I took the shade Alchemist, which is, in my opinion, the most gorgeous gold shade in the gold palette, and I applied that all over the cut crease I created. Then I went back with more of the shade Log and blended the shade Alchemist and the shade Log into each other. And then I took the shade Sparks and just with my finger applied some of it on the top of Alchemist. After that, I applied more of Sparks in my inner corner, and I went back with a bit more of Aria in my crease just to once again blend everything into each other. And that was pretty much that eye. Then on the Sunset side, as I said before, there's no really a crease shade, so I was really thinking of which shade to use, but I ended up using the shade Horizon, which is the orangey shade in the center of the palette. So after I added Horizon, I once again used the dark brown color in this palette instead of Log. It's called Igneous. So I used Igneous in my outer V, and once again, when I was done with that, I prepared my cut crease using concealer. Once I was done, I took the shade Abode on top of the concealer. Then I took some more of Igneous to blend them into each other. Then I took the white shade, which is in this palette called Ice Gold, and applied it on top of the gold shade and in my inner corner. And then I took some of Horizon again to my crease and blend everything together. And whilst my makeup does appear to be quite similar on the two eye, I can still see the difference, and I hope you could see the difference as well in the footage. Even if you try your best to recreate the same look with the two eyeshadow palettes, you are going to struggle because they are super different. So the purpose of this video was basically that, in my opinion, these two eyeshadow palettes appear super similar online. They seem like a neutral palette with some pop of colors. They are actually very different once you see them in person and once you use them. Gold is a lot more cool toned, and every single shade except the dark brown shade is different in this eyeshadow palette. Now you might argue that within the palette you have shades quite similar to each other and they appear to be quite repetitive, but they are not repeating across the palettes. And even though they seem to be very, very similar in the pan, once you swatch them, you actually realize that they are not as similar as they appear to be. First, here are the 3 orangey brown shades from the Sunset palette that we mentioned before. So actually, once you swatch them, you realize they are 3 completely different shades. They do have a very, very similar orangey brown tone to them. However, they are not the same color. And here are the 3 cool brown shades from the gold palette. In my opinion, they are a lot more similar, especially the first 2. One of them could have been replaced with something else. However, it's such a useful shade to have. You are gonna be able to hit pan and use up both of them whilst using other shades in this palette. Now let me show you all of the golden shades in these 2 eyeshadow palettes. First, you have 6 shimmery shades in the Sunset palette, excluding the white shade, which I wouldn't really consider to be shimmery. It does have a sheen to it, but it's more of just like a topper shade. Even in my inner corner, you can hardly see that color. So apart of that, you have 2 rose gold shade, you have 2 orangey gold shade and 2 true gold shade. Here are the first 3 and I'm gonna swatch 3 more. So here are the other 3. As you can see, they are quite different. Maybe these 2 rose gold shades are quite similar and you wouldn't need them both, but apart of those, they are very, very different colors. In the gold palette, you have 8 shimmery shades, apart of the white one. Of course, one of them is the blue one, so we're not gonna include that in these swatches. Apart of that, you have 7 more. So now I'm gonna swatch those 7 shades. Here are the first 3. Then the next 3. Sorry for the horrible swatches. And then here on the bottom you have Chrome, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous duochrome shade. So as you can see, overall there are some similarities. I would say that there is no repetitive gold shade though whatsoever. They are all super, super different, especially if you look at the shades from the gold palette. They are a lot more cool toned, of course, except this yellow one, which is super, super yellow. But apart of that, these are very, very cool toned gold shades, whilst the ones in the Sunset palette are a lot more warm toned and a lot more on the orangey and rosy side. And now I'm gonna include my footage of swatching the entire palette side by side. As you can see, the vibe you get from these 2 palettes are completely different, even though there are some similarities. I feel like with her palettes it's really, really hard to create those Instagram eyeshadow looks that everyone is into, because her shimmery shades work completely differently. They aren't going to create these harsh lines, but I feel like for real life, to actually use the eyeshadow palette and go outside wearing it, these colors are just a lot more flattering and they are so foolproof. When I first received the Sunset palette, I was really, really scared of working with the dark brown shade, but as I said, there is no other cool toned brown shade in the palette. So once I actually took my crease brush and I started applying the dark brown shade to my crease, and then I took some of that light pink shade to blend it out, and it looked absolutely gorgeous. So even if you are not really good with makeup and you don't have the best brushes ever, her matte eyeshadows are super, super easy to blend, and I feel like her shimmery shades work the best when you just stop them on with your finger. So these eyeshadow palettes are really made for anyone who wants to have a gorgeous makeup look but isn't necessarily the best in doing her makeup, especially when it comes to eye makeup. I do really appreciate her eyeshadow palettes because I gravitate more and more towards a more natural makeup look, and I feel like this kind of eyeshadow palettes are really essential for that. So once again, to answer the question from the beginning of the video, yes, I do feel like they are super different and they are very compatible. I think if you want to be able to create tons of different eye makeup looks with these palettes, you do have to have them both, and the brown shades in these palettes are completely different, so if you purchase them you are not going to have repetitive shades. That's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because I would love to have you here, and until next time, take care of yourself. I will see you very soon. Bye.